They should all be white, just straight white turtles, just no melanin anywhere, just pale.
We've been moon bleached.
That would be so funny.
No, I am the father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained. Once again, I'm joined by Cormac.
Yeah.
Let's go. We are back to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, the latest edition of the Turtles franchise that just came out last week.
Yeah, something like that.
Like a week and a half ago, kind of. It's fun. I really like it. Yeah. Feels more like teenagers. I feel like most iterations, they feel more like adults.
True.
Rather than just like actual teenagers, which I think is what it's supposed to be. They're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I feel like something that regularly occurs, especially in the movies, is they're given very mature personalities. I'm like, that's not who these characters should be.
Yeah, like I'm thinking those live action ones.
Yeah.
Where they're just straight up adults.
I'm like, why do you need to be adults? Make them teenagers. And I think in this one, it kind of helps that they are played by teenagers and young adults.
Yeah, you can tell the voices are pretty dang young.
Yeah,
sure.
And I think along with that, this movie, the writing, has Gen Z dialogue that is not cringe to listen to.
Right, yeah, that's
because
not difficult.
It's not outdated. It doesn't feel forced. It's very natural the way they talk.
Yeah, like it might be cringe to those who already think that is cringe.
Yeah.
But that's because those who don't think it is because it's not.
Exactly.
You know, it feels authentic for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think the way it feels authentic is because they all recorded in the same room. Seth Rogen really wanted that from the beginning because he's done a lot of voice acting and things like that.
He's got the experience.
And he feels that being in person with the other actors makes it more dynamic and more authentic.
Which, he thinks that because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. And so having all these teenage boys talking and riffing off of each other makes it more authentic. Yeah. I think it makes for a more enjoyable experience and feels like real characters. It doesn't feel like they're just making up dialogue to kind of go with the rest of the story. It feels as if these are real conversations that you or I could actually be having.
Yeah. There are little moments where they kind of burst out into like all four of them talking at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like I thought it happened once at the beginning. I was like, oh, that was a cool moment. But they actually dropped those moments in a few times. And I said, that's exactly like even when I was hanging out in junior high and a little bit of high school, you know, when I was a teenager, that's what would happen. Somebody would make a comment and then everybody erupt. And so like you have to go and watch it again just listen to one turtle at a time to catch everything that happens in those moments. It's great to hear that, and that comes from what you were talking about, where they're recording in the same room, they're giving off their own teenaged personalities, their younger personalities, to really sell the teenage part of their title.
Yeah, I think it makes the whole story feel like a high school story.
Oh, certainly.
Like it's not something, like I feel like a common issue that happens with things that take place in high school. They don't feel like they take place in high school. The Tom Holland Spider-Man movies take place in high school. They don't feel like high school movies. We've been watching Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. They're in high school. Rarely ever feels like it. And I think having this story feel like that makes it so much more authentic. It feels like it's really in high school. They're facing high school issues.
Yeah.
They're young adults. They're wanting to like go out and be independent, but they have a parental figure that is kind of strict and still sees them as a child.
Yeah,
And
he's
they're
so
like,
scared of them getting milked.
Yeah, it's so funny.
That was the best joke, the through joke of them getting milked.
You get milked for your blood.
It's
I'm
so
like, excuse
funny.
me?
It's so funny. He's so scared for them to be milked.
Hilarious. But like those kind of concerns are
Right.
concerns that your parents would have as a teenager. And you're like, Mom, I'm gonna be fine. I'm not gonna get milked by someone out on the street.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But I think like that all adds and builds up and makes it more authentic and feels real.
Yeah.
And what kind of helps is, so the person who made it, Seth Rogen,
Yep.
in the first teaser trailer, it literally said, created by permanent teenager Seth Rogen. And I think that's why it feels so authentic, because although it's written by a guy that is not of the current generation, the feelings and letting real teenagers riff off of each other.
Take their own creative liberty.
Exactly. It shows that he understands that it is not his generation, and to make it feel real, he has to let it go.
Yeah,
And
exactly. He did a good job of that too, because he is still characters in the. He voices characters in the film.
And that was something I noticed too, is he's not very active in this one.
for voice acting.
Yeah, I feel like if Seth Rogen is in a movie, you almost always know. This one, you know when you hear his voice, but unless you hear it, you forget that he's even in the movie.
It's true.
But other movies, it's way different. You usually know. You're like, oh yeah, it's Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
And you can't stop thinking about it. And so I like that not only the story itself is like a high school coming of age, you have to let your kids be able to explore for themselves. That's what he did with the creation of the movie.
Right.
You have to be able to let your child, which most creators are kind of like that with their creations, having to let it go and just have them do their own thing and trusting the process that it will come out good.
Yeah, it's kind of something that I haven't seen from Seth Rogen before, to be honest.
And even like comedically, because he does a lot of comedic stuff, and this is a very comedic
certainly
show, but I feel like his comedy feels a little off sometimes. Like it doesn't always hit, but it's interesting of him as a comedic writer to write this comedic story and having us dying laughing in the theater because it feels real. I think it just comes back to that feeling like a real story.
Yeah, it's a curious situation where it's certainly structured more like a Seth Rogen film, but because it's been stymied with the younger teens, it added a different flair to it for sure. Because I mean, it does to me, as I was watching it did feels like some of other Seth Rogen films a little bit, because I could see little bits and pieces where I was like, yeah, that's pretty Seth Rogen move. But because of the way that those young boys feel and who voice act it, just it's a delight, to be honest. It's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I think with Seth Rogen not being the focus, I think is what makes it hit so much harder.
True.
I like it when I like his funny stuff when he's not the focus of the story or his more serious roles. I think that's where he does his best, when he's kind of in the background and less of a main focus, because I think that's what kind of gets people off with him too, because that's me with Adam Sandler. I think if he's more in the background and I don't really notice that it's Adam Sandler, I like it more.
Fair
but
enough.
if he's at the forefront of the movie, I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah, Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen, you could do a whole episode just Venn diagramming them.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
It's way funny. But yeah, I kind of like it, and they're clearly having fun with the story.
Yeah.
And especially with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a beloved franchise
Certainly.
that has been going on for years. And so I think it's kind of interesting to see new takes on things. I've heard a lot of people kind of be like, I don't really care for the takes they're doing. But what always bothers me about that kind of opinion is, why do you want to see the same story over and over?
Yeah.
I was like, who wants to see the original Ninja Turtles over and over again?
Nobody.
Exactly. Be like, those weren't for me as a kid.
Yeah,
I
same.
didn't really get into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles until I was a teenager myself, maybe. But I know a lot of people who grew up with them and loved them, but I could never really get onto it until a lot more recently.
Same.
And so I find it kind of interesting because a common gripe that I've heard is, so typically each turtle has their own little quirk, something that they kind of focus on. Donnie's the tech guy.
Right.
Michael is the more erratic one.
Yeah, he's the goof. He's
exactly,
the goof.
Exactly. Raph is the angry, very stern kind of one, and then Leo's the leader.
Right.
And in this one, they do kind of have elements of that.
Oh, certainly.
But what I like about this one, which I think makes it feel more real, is they all feel like brothers. Their personalities, other than these specific little quirks, they are almost all the same.
Yeah.
But I think for this story, that works.
Yeah, they're very paralleled for sure in personality. Like they grew up in the sewer alone together.
Yeah.
And all they really had was each other to talk.
Yeah, it feels like real brothers who actually would riff off of each other and just be goofy all the time, because that's exactly what it's like.
Oh yeah,
As
I
someone,
can tell you. Yeah, I can tell you right now. I only have brothers. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, because you just lose it, and you kind of have those similar personalities, but you each have your own individualistic parts of yourself.
Certainly.
Which I think is the way to do it. I think it's hard to write characters like that because I think a common criticism for those is they're too samey.
Yeah.
They feel like just carbon copies of each other. But I think in this one, they're just different enough, but just similar enough to feel real. And I like that coming from a family who I have a brother, or like in your case, having brothers, it feels real. It feels like you're actually taking the time to understand the dynamic between all the characters.
Yeah, for sure. I can think of a few times while watching it where I was like, that's exactly how me and my brothers would talk to our mom about something. And it's funny because there are those moments where I'm at home and we're talking, and then mom comes through the door, and we're just kind of laughing and whatnot, and she says something, and then the three of us kind of can just know what we're all thinking at the same time. And there were a lot of moments like that in the movie too. And so just with my experience like that, I can really see that they did their homework on, and maybe they didn't, and it just is how it naturally became that way because of who was recording their voices and how they did it all together. I could imagine that they developed a pretty awesome relationship there.
I 100% believe it. Just based on their interviews alone.
Yeah, true.
They have been just having a blast, it feels like. And I think for this kind of story, that's what you need. You need it to feel authentic like that. And for someone who didn't really get into TMNT growing up, I think this is a good introduction for newcomers to the franchise.
Yeah.
I think it allows people to have some of those similarities from the original source material, but also have something that feels more authentic and real to what the world is today. And getting some throwbacks like that, we get very cool nods to original characters.
Oh yeah.
There's a end credit scene where it nods that Shredder's going to be in the sequel.
Right.
Or in the show that they're developing as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was going to start to a show, really?
Yeah,
Wicked.
Yeah, that was before they released it. That they greenlit a sequel and a show, actually.
Dang.
Yeah, so they were expecting it to do well. It is.
Yeah.
But that's
something
that's going a little far ahead.
Yeah, that's something I was honestly slightly surprised about. I didn't think it would be received as well as it is, but it's got 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, that's pretty dang good.
Yeah, it's been absolutely killing it. And I think it's that mix of having the modern feel to the movie while also nodding to the original source material.
Right.
The designs especially, they are very similar to what they originally were.
True.
Granted, in the originals, they all have the exact same character design, and then it's different aspects of their
Right,
body.
just different colors.
But in this one, they still have some nods to that. Like each of them, like on their belts, has the letter of their name, which is an original thing. Or they have the full color of their masks and just different style aspects that I think give a shout out, but also giving us something new, which I think is what we need. And with that, I think we got to talk about the design overall.
Yes.
The beautiful animation of this movie.
It really does. It's a looker. That's for sure.
It's gorgeous because the animation, it's meant to feel like a high school sketchbook.
Right.
The kind of stuff you would doodle while you're sitting in math class, bored out of your mind, just trying to let the day go by. And it feels so much like that come to life.
Yeah.
Because you have all these imperfections, which I think I absolutely love. Like every character's head shape, every building, it's all off. Nothing is perfectly symmetrical. Not the characters' personalities, not their actual shapes, the backgrounds. Everything feels off, but it still feels put together, which is
because everything
wonderful.
is off.
Exactly.
So then it's all one uniform shape, being asymmetrical.
Exactly. You have little like sketch marks for details on characters. They don't really go like fully like hyper realistic detail. It's just like little scribbles. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then like all the colors, it looks as if they colored it in with marker.
Yeah.
It gives me Spider-Verse vibes.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I really love that they used it for this kind of story. I think it fits because that's kind of something we've talked about several times on this episode is the hybrid mix of 2D and 3D isn't going to fit every story. And so finding a reason to do it and executing it well makes it add to the story and makes it more engaging.
Right, rather than just doing it for the sake of doing it.
And I think this one does it really well because they're meant to be young high school students. They want to go to high school.
Yeah.
Like freaking lunatics. But they make it look so great. It looks as if high school came out onto the big screen. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. The other part of the design is that I like is how it kind of it is the high school sketchbook that also, but it feeds a lot into like street art.
Yeah, like graffiti style.
Graffiti, street art. And because I mean that's where they're growing up is going to influence them a lot. I mean, in the middle of Manhattan, that's going to be
true.
That's going to be what you're going to see, especially if you're down in the sewers. That's going to be what you see.
Yeah.
And so it'd be interesting, and like it's like we're watching, because we are watching it from the Turtles' perspectives, right? That's the whole idea. That is the reality that they see.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, they want the high school, and then they have the influence of the street art and whatnot. And just looking at that perspective makes it that much better.
Yeah. I totally agree. As you're growing up, that perspective kind of changes, and I think as we go through the movie, things get a bit brighter.
Yep.
Too, because we start off and the movie is very dark, which makes sense. They can only really come out at night, and it's trying to give this cool stylized effect, and that's really good. It's the change going through high school like it is in the show. I think that's a wonderful attention to detail from the animators.
For sure. Like they've kind of finally let the manhole slide back.
Yeah, they let the sunlight in. They should all be white, just straight white turtles, just no melanin anywhere, just pale.
We've been moon bleached.
That would be so funny. I just love all the different attention to detail and little aspects that add to everything in the show. And for like the human characters, I like that each one kind of has their own little quirks as well, but they never go too much into the people, which I think is good because the focus is on
mutants.
the turtles and the mutants.
Yes,
because the movie's literally called Mutant Mayhem. It
true.
should focus more on them, and I love that they do. Even all like the bad guys, or some of them being bad guys.
Right. Yeah.
I like that they each have their own little personalities, their own asymmetry to themselves. I think it adds more and more, which kind of can be a bit surprising because the cast of this show is massive, and it doesn't always work having a really big cast.
True.
Because you have the 4 main characters, you have Splinter, and then you have the 7 or 8 bad guys that all get a good amount of screen time to have some character development.
Right.
It's really hard to have a large ensemble cast without feeling too cluttered. And I think it still felt like a little bit cluttered, but in the context of the high school story kind of thing, that's how it should feel.
True.
Because you're kind of being thrown into the world already, and so it feels a little bit cluttered.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like how they've been playing it off. I think for the kind of story they wanted to tell, this is exactly how you should do it. So I'm excited to see what else they do, since they're going to be doing a sequel and a show. I don't know. Will I watch them? If they're animated the same, probably.
Yeah,
but
true
if they do like some of the like DreamWorks routes where they start with the 3D movie and then they do the 2D shows, I'll be like,
it's hard to get behind. It
exactly.
Just is.
I'm like, it's not the same style.
And I understand that it's much easier to animate that way.
It's true.
I don't know. It feels too different, and then I'm like, well, they're not the same, but they're acting the same. What the heck?
Yeah. And speaking of animating things easier, so one of the, I think, producers of the movie came out and said that no animators were overworked, which I hope is true. I really hope that that's true, because there has been a lot of overworking and underappreciation in the industry right now.
Yeah, and I could imagine that there's been a lot of attention for animation as of late.
Yeah. But until an animator says it,
True.
I will not believe any executives.
Fair enough.
I think they are the people that we should be listening to, because they're the ones who are actually doing the work.
That's true. That's true.
Hopefully they did, because they made a magnificent film. So, on the last note of TMNT, before we go, you know what time it is. It's the question of the week. Let's go. So what we want to know for this question of the week is, what is your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles iteration? Do you like the original series? Do you like the live action movies? We won't judge.
Any of them. Right. Yeah.
Out loud anyway. I won't tell you.
Yeah, right.
Or do you like any of the series? Anything. So, Cormac, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I, like you, I've not been too much of a fanatic, to say the least. I would say this latest film is certainly up there.
Yeah.
But was it the night after, or maybe the same night, that you were watching the one where, what's his name? Who voices Leonardo?
Ben Schwartz.
Yeah, where Ben Schwartz
Sonic.
is voicing. Yeah, Sonic. That one's pretty good too. I like I haven't watched a whole lot of that one, but I like the idea where their shells are, customizable.
Yeah.
That was a really cool idea. And Ben Schwartz's voice is always a plus for me.
Yeah, that one's my favorite as well. So the series of it, because we watched the movie.
Right.
So the series of it is Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's the one.
It's the most recent series, I think.
Right, probably.
I'm pretty sure it is. But I really like it. It's animated in 2D, and so in this one they have like mystical powers as well.
Right.
And I don't know, I like it. I think it's kind of fun and kind of silly, and that's the kind of stories that I like. But they still have a lot of good action, some good story beats, and real emotion still in it.
Right.
And I think that's why it hits me so hard, because like the live action movies have Megan Fox, and you know what happens when she's in a movie.
Womp. True enough.
No shame to Megan Fox. If you like Megan Fox, that's fine. I just did not like those movies.
Right, yeah.
They're just kind of ridiculous in a not very great way. But yeah, the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is probably my favorite iteration of them. I haven't watched a ton. I know there were a couple older like CGI animated ones for Nickelodeon that some people like. There's the original series, the 2000 ones.
Right.
And some of them, I'm like, they're all right. I can see the appeal for most of them, but I think Rise is what got me pretty interested in the Turtles, because I had seen the live action ones before, but I was kind of disregarded the franchise as a whole. And so Rise kind of got me into it and actually cared to understand the lore of the actual characters.
Right.
And so that's why Rise is my favorite. But yeah, we want to know what your favorite TMNT iteration is. So please let us know, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, wherever. Let us know. Tag us.
Yeah.
We want to know.
Yeah, if you're desperate enough, ask for the phone number and we'll get you a text. That's fine.
Yeah, that's true. You can text us. That works too. But yeah, that was this episode of Easily Entertained. I hope you enjoyed us talking about the Turtles. It was a great time.
Booyah.
Until next time, this has been Easily Entertained. Peace.
You have been entertained.